Welcome to the Tea Party Power Hour. My very special guest today is Mr. Mike Zullo. Mike is the cold case posse commander for Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Maricopa County, Arizona. He is here today to tell us about his latest trip to Hawaii, where he continues the investigation into Barack Obama's eligibility. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Hi, how are you, Mark? Great to talk with you.
Hey, it's good to talk with you again, too. This time, did you manage to get to Hawaii without the press leaking it in advance?
You know what? I actually did, brother. I had an opportunity presented itself to meet some contacts out in Hawaii. The sheriff deemed it necessary to dispatch me back out there, and we did it differently this time. The only people that knew I was going to be the sheriff himself and the deputy chief and no one else. So we kind of did it this time without any potential leak, and security concerns, because there were no leaks, were a lot less. So we took the risk, and I went out there by myself, and I met certain contacts out there, which proved to be pretty fruitful for us.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Now, the last time you went, it was leaked in advance, and you were not met with what I would call open arms. Was it any easier going this time, since they did not know you were there in advance, or did you get the same cold shoulder that you got last time?
Well, no, actually I had the cops called on me again, another establishment. Apparently, my name seems to be, over there in the same vein as Jerry Corsty's. It's mud. So once they find out who I am, somebody seems to always Google it, and next thing I know, I'm being asked to get out.
Now, what's interesting is that you are a law enforcement person yourself. If I'm not mistaken, you actually have a badge that says Maricopa County Sheriff's Department Cold Case Posse. Am I correct?
Yes, we're fully empowered by the Sheriff of Maricopa County. The Sheriff of Maricopa County has the ability to deputize anyone at any time. And this organization, once we are activated, we act as if the sheriff himself was there in person. We act on his behalf. And in this investigation, I report directly to Sheriff Arpaio.
So just to kind of review, the last time you were there, you tried to see Alvin Onaka, and they called the police on you. And then you had some people go to Kapiolani Hospital, where all you wanted to do was ask some questions, and they told you to get out. What happened this time? You said the cops were called on you again. What did you do this time?
Well, actually, I went to interview Verna K. Lee. I wanted to do a in-person, face-to-face interview with her. Turns out that Mrs. Lee lives in an assisted living facility. So as normal police protocol, you go to the front desk and you identify yourself, and you ask if there's an opportunity that you can speak to the individual you're looking for. I was met there by a gentleman, and there was another woman sitting next to him. And I presented my credentials, and they told me that she was out for about an hour. She would be coming back. So I said, okay, I'll come back in an hour. They asked if I would leave a business card, and I politely refused to, mainly because I didn't want somebody running my name. When I was sitting in the parking lot and half hour approximately gone by, I decided to go back in and make sure I understood the protocol, because in an assisted living facility, some of these places, these people are free to do whatever they want to do. Other ones, they have medical needs, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to put Mrs. Lee in any kind of fear, especially at her age, having the police knock on your door.
Sure.
When I went back to the desk, the gentleman I spoke to was no longer there, but the woman was, and she demanded to see my credentials again. This time she took down all my information, and then she proceeded to tell me that she was going to call Honolulu PD and have them come here and verify who I was. So I had to ask her twice to get my credentials back. What she was holding was my badge and ID card. And I said, I'll wait right here in the little waiting room. And about 30 minutes later, a corporal from HPD showed up. And it was kind of interesting. He comes over and goes, what's the problem? I says, well, he's an investigator. And she got the county wrong. She called it Mariposa County. And I think she tried to contact the sheriff's office there. And obviously they're not going to know who I am because I don't work for them. She said that he presented credentials. He wants to talk to somebody. He goes, well, what's the problem? And she goes, well, I don't know if they're real. And she goes, well, is that him sitting there? And she goes, yeah. So he looks and goes, okay. So he motions me to come in the hallway. I show him my credentials. He says, great, fine, let's go back in. He walks up to her and goes, he's fine. And at that point, I tried to secure an interview with Verna K. Lee. What I was asking for was their procedure. What I kept getting rebutted back with was, what do you want? And I kept saying to this woman, I want to interview Miss Lee. I have some questions I need clarified for her. She goes, well, what do you want? I said, I'm just telling you. And she goes, well, how do you want to do this? I go, well, I would like to interview her here, if that's possible. Well, where do you want to do this? Well, I just told you I want to interview her here. I'd do it right in this little area I was sitting in. It's fine with me. So what I am trying to establish here is I'm trying to be respectful of the woman's age. I don't want to place her in fear. And if you have a protocol or you could send a familiar face with me or a next of kin, that would be much appreciated. So she took my card, she took my information again, and she told me that she would have a director of that facility contact me. About an hour and a half later, I did get a telephone call, and that director did confirm to me that she spoke to Verna K. Lee, and that she did agree to meet with me, and an interview was going to be set up for 4:15. It was Tuesday afternoon, Hawaii time, and present at that interview was going to be myself, obviously, Verna K. Lee, her husband, and this director, and I had no objections to any of this. I said, that's fine. I just have a couple questions. She can clear some things up for me, and I'll be on my way. About a half hour after that, about an hour and a half before the interview, I got a call back. And I got a call back from that director, and Verna K. Lee had then changed her mind and told the director to contact me, tell me she didn't wish to meet with me, and that she had a message for me. And the message for me was, I no longer work for the Department of Health. If you want to know anything, go ask them. Now, that's a pretty big change from, yes, I'll meet with you, to the message I got. So obviously, someone there had a conversation with her. And that interview just never took place. So that was one of that was the second time, I think, that we were asked not to come back, and also had the cops called on us. But, that's what it is. And that's the way it runs over there, and you kind of learn that real quick, that it's a very liberal place, and they protect their own.
Well, you said that the trip was fruitful. That obviously wasn't one of the pieces of fruit. What can you tell us regarding anything you may have found on this second trip pertaining to the investigation that you felt was positive?
Well, we met with contacts out there, and we pursued the birth certificate of Virginia Tsunohara. Virginia Tsunohara was a little girl born August 4th, 1961. Obviously born at Kapolani. No, actually, she wasn't born at Kapolani Medical Center. She was born at a different hospital, and I don't have that information right now in front of me. But she was born the same day as Barack Obama at 9:18 p.m. But we come to understand that her certificate number is way out of sequence to Mr. Obama's. Now, this little girl only lived 22 hours. Mr. Obama's birth certificate number, if my memory serves me, is 10641. Mm-hmm. This little girl's birth certificate number is 11,080. The Nordyke birth certificates are in the tens. How come this little girl's birth certificate number is some 400 numbers higher than Mr. Obama's, starting in the 11,000s, which would indicate that this would be 11,080th birth to take place in that state. How could that be? So that sparked a pretty big question. We also came to learn that the surviving relatives of this little girl have made numerous requests through the court system there to get a copy of her long-form birth certificate, and she has been staunchly opposed by the state of Hawaii, and namely Deputy Attorney General Jill Nagamini, same Attorney General that I had the privilege of having my ducking and jiving contest with when we went there to talk the last time. Giving excuses during these court proceedings on the line of, we have to preserve these documents, they're very old and brittle. I mean, it was kind of like really ridiculous stuff. anything to stop this family from getting this information. You have to ask yourself why. I have a little girl that in 24 hours I was able to go to Hawaii and secure more supporting documentation to say she was definitely born on that date and she definitely died on that date. And documentation I have to support the alleged birth of Mr. Obama on the same day, a 52-year-old Harvard graduate, president of the Law Review, state senator, and now president of the United States. I have no supporting documentation other than this phony file that they released on the White House website.
Well, the reason the supporting documentation you're looking for is so important is because, and you and I have talked privately about this, but whenever you have a birth certificate that in all likelihood was probably amended in 2006, late 2006, early 2007, at a time, that was, moving toward 50 years from the the date that the original was placed on file, when you have an amendment that's added that late to fill in the holes in the document and all the blanks that weren't filled in the first time, that document loses all probative value, and therefore you need the corroborating documents from hospitals and doctors' bills and all those things, correct? Correct.
And to point out, I have documents now, 51 years old, I think it is now, where these documents were sitting in files in a hospital, not in any temperature-controlled room, not in a vault, like they purport these birth certificates are, and these documents are fine. I have photocopies of her medical history. So this argument that they throw forth in a courtroom saying they have to preserve these documents because they're very old, just slaps in the face of everyone's intelligence. You've got Pacino, who says that she just strolled into the vault, found his stuff, and took photostats of it. If you didn't say that these documents were so brittle or I had to wear white gloves before I held them, she just stuck the thing purportedly on a copier and took photocopies of it. So the arguments aren't working. The arguments add to the suspicion. And this Tsunohara thing has been out there before. Corsi has written on it before. But when we got involved in it, it was after our meeting with the Department of Health the first time. And if you go back to the interview you did the first time, the way that they were talking to us was very suspect. This document that now, after finally speaking to Verna K. Lee and substantiating the chronological order that birth records are stamped, it is impossible for this document to have a birth certificate number starting in the 11,000s. Especially impossible to have that with the documents presented by the Nordyke twins starting in the 10,000s. So what happened here? Why is this number so much higher than everyone else's? And according to Verna K. Lee, what she told us, it's an impossibility.
I have to tell you, I've been over all the laws in Hawaii regarding who can and who can't get a copy of the original and so forth, and there is no legal standing for the state of Hawaii to deny Virginia Tsunohara's relatives from getting a copy and actually seeing that original. That is clearly someone who is in there doing work on behalf of the president, defending the president while he's in office. I'm sorry, there is no legal standing for that. And one of the things you and I have discussed in the past is that every time there is a critical situation somewhere, it seems like there's either an attorney from Perkins and Coy that shows up or an attorney that has some kind of a family connection to a member of Obama's family. So the whole thing just stinks. It doesn't pass the sniff test, and I can only hope that when the spam finally hits the fan, that a lot of these people are brought to justice right along with whoever is responsible for forging the original document. Now, one thing I have to ask you, Mike, is the last press conference that you guys did back on July 17th, For me personally, it kind of ended on a down note. I kind of got the impression that maybe Sheriff Arpaio was getting a little tired of this. He can't get anybody in Arizona to take the case, and that's pretty much where his authority stops in terms of being able to hand the case over to prosecutors. So a lot of us got the impression that maybe it was the beginning of the end in terms of the Obama probe. Please tell us where things are right now, because there's so many people out there wondering, is it over? Has everyone just decided, let's wait and see what happens with the election? I mean, what exactly is going on?
The investigation is far from over. I think what the sheriff was hoping to accomplish was to send a message that we've got to get this thing, to Congress, and he wants to hand it off to somebody else. And I think he was hoping that somebody would have picked up on that and opened a door. The sheriff in the last press conference said, well, we're going to keep the file open and for new information. What he didn't come out and say was, my investigators are still working it as diligently as they have been. The sheriff would not have dispatched me back to Hawaii for a second time if we weren't working this. There was risk involved there, and there's a risk we had to take. We are proceeding with this. We'll probably have more information unfolding in the coming weeks, but this has not stopped. The sheriff has not stopped, and as of yesterday, speaking with the sheriff, I don't even think the sheriff cares what the outcome of the election is. He's talking about doing something with it after the election. So the sheriff is on this. What I think the problem is, Mark, people are getting confused. We are not chasing down the president. We have crimes that have been committed here. We have crimes in other states. We have a fraud that's been committed here. We have internet fraud. We have fraud all over the place. And that's what this sheriff is pursuing. It's going to be the federal government to worry about the Obama situation. We're telling you we've got a phony document. We have a document that nobody should have had the right to create. If the State Department of Health didn't create that birth certificate, no one has legal authority to create it. Now, representations were made to the public, and they're phony. They're false. There is no information supporting this document. There is not one hospital record. Mark, all Capilani Medical Center would have to do is produce their records, and they never have. Because they don't have them. They didn't even say they have them. They don't even say anything about them. Because they don't have them. We all know that now. So you've got a lot of people playing a game and hoping that nothing's ever going to come of this. But I can tell you this. I don't know what the outcome of the election is going to be, but Barack Obama will not be president forever. And one day, this stuff is going to surface. This isn't going to be like, the conspiracy surrounding JFK or anything like that. This stuff is going to surface. And we're going to know the truth. And I think that what is happening here is people are feeling the frustration that the sheriff is feeling. He has tried for the last 3 months to get the ear of Congress. And I just found out today that the Speaker of the House is the one that told them that no one is going to entertain this at this point in time. So we're stuck.
So John Boehner, for the record, has told Congress we are not going to entertain this idea, period.
Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up right now. Right? That's my understanding. So it's not something that they're going to entertain. And, I think you and I may have discussed this previously. They are all convinced, they can win this election and whatever the outcome of that's going to be. I don't know. Nobody knows. But they're not going to entertain this idea. And I think that that's just the party line. And I'll tell you this, from my own personal perspective, I personally now feel like an American who has no voice. It doesn't matter how long I've worked on this. It doesn't matter who we've spoken to. It's kind of like, screaming into a pillow. But that doesn't mean you stop. And we're not going to stop. We know what's happened here. We know this is fraud. And the bigger question is why. But the bigger question why is going to be answered by another investigational authority, hopefully one day. Hopefully a special prosecutor will look into this. But we know there's a crime here.
I'm sorry, Mike. One of the things I can tell you is that I've tried bringing this to my congressman, in fact, a guy who wouldn't be in office were it not for the help of the Tea Party. He seems to have forgotten that. He also seems to be ignorant of the fact that the Tea Party wants this investigated. And I spoke to one of his assistants, who happens to be someone that I went to school with for a long time. We know each other very well. And I got the same treatment from him that I would have gotten from any other congressman's aide in the House of Representatives. And that is, they didn't want any part of it. They said that if they introduced this into a room full of Republicans, everybody would frown and say, let's talk about something else. And I said, yeah, if it's a room full of Republican politicians, not if it's a room full of Republican voters. And the person just didn't want to discuss it. In fact, they returned my initial phone call because it was me and they knew me, but once they found out what I wanted, there hasn't been a single email returned since then. So every single member of Congress has gotten the word. You're saying from Boehner, which makes sense, that this is not to be discussed, and apparently it's not going to be discussed. But the one thing I can tell you, Mike, is that a lot of people in this area aren't going to put up with a congressman, his guy's name is Bill Flores, who doesn't go to Washington and do the work that the people want him to do. We did not send him, and I'm going to say this on the radio, we did not send Bill Flores, our congressman, to Washington to kiss John Boehner's ass. That's not why we sent that man there. And that's what he's doing right now. I don't care if he's a freshman. We sent a bunch of Tea Partiers there, a freshman class. They were supposed to be mavericks. They were going to get things done. They weren't going to do things the old way. And so far, all I get from this guy is happy 4th of July, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas. I've got a calendar with all the holidays in it. I don't need this guy for that. That's not why I sent him to Washington. That's not why I voted on him to send him to Washington. And what I can tell you is that this is the case with every single member of Congress. They will not look at this. And I even cornered the aide. I said, well, let me give you an example. And Mike, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, so I'm going to abbreviate it. I said, how can you explain the fact that Savannah Guthrie took a photo of the certified copy that was scanned in and turned into a PDF and posted at whitehouse.gov, and when you open that PDF in Illustrator, there's stuff on there that isn't on the Guthrie photo of the exact same piece of paper, a photo that was taken only a few minutes before that paper was scanned in based on the time of creation listed in the document data. And the answer I got back, Mike, was, I'm going to give it to you. You've done your research. That's a good question. You've done your research. But the translation was, we don't give a damn. I could have a picture, or rather a video, of Barack Obama being born in a hut in Kenya, and they wouldn't give a damn. And if I said, hey, I've got, the birther issue, you're afraid of the birther issue? Okay, fine. Let's talk about the selective service card. He could have been born in the middle of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, and if you don't sign your selective service card within a certain amount of time, you're not eligible to run for president. Okay, how about that? I hadn't heard that one. That's a new one. Send me something. All right, we'll look into that. And they're full of bull. So the bottom line is, I don't know who's going to make something happen, Mike, but I just read a book on George Washington, and they can basically tell you, after a couple of 100 years of research here, they can basically tell you everything this guy had for breakfast every day of his life. So I am hopeful that eventually we're going to get to the truth on this. So, all I can say is God bless you for continuing to try. And I also want to ask you when we might hear something else officially from the cold case posse. Is it going to be after the election, or do you plan to make any public announcements or have any press conferences before then?
I don't believe that we're going to have any press conferences before then unless there's something that is just a game changer. We do have some very promising... I have to be careful how I say this, Mark. We do have some very encouraging leads to pursue. And if something were to come up that we believe would just be a flat-out game changer, I'm sure the sheriff would have a press conference. I don't foresee us doing that, although we probably will be releasing information to the public as best we can because we believe they deserve it. And that's why I keep doing these interviews, is because we believe you guys deserve it. And we would use, a venue like you or a venue like WND to do that. But right now I don't see a press conference.
Well, you know, speaking of the media, and you just mentioned myself and WND, they have all but swept this thing under the rug. I'm guessing that at this point you get virtually no inquiries from major media outlets at the national level?
No, we get none whatsoever. Nothing. Yeah. Nothing from them.
That's pretty much what I expected. What you have behind you, as I said, I think on the first interview, is just an army of citizen journalists who want to get the truth out no matter what. And one of the things I'm hoping, Mike, give me your opinion on this. Now, right now, you've gone some places where the doors have been closed to you, and the only reason the doors have been closed, it's not based on any legal precedent or any legal any legal standing that would give them the right to close the doors to you, but it's just because the person who's in charge of the organization was appointed by Barack Obama. I think you know the organization I'm talking about. But should there be a change in November, an administrative change, by the time February rolls around, you might have somebody new to deal with in those offices, which could make things a little different. What are your thoughts?
Well, and I agree with you, and I think that's what Sheriff Arpaio was hoping for. Sheriff Arpaio is, like a pit bull on a piece of meat with this thing now. He knows what the game is. The man was a federal law enforcement officer. I mean, he knows. He understands that this is a game being played here, and he wants to pursue it. And I'll tell you something about the sheriff. The sheriff doesn't care if the results come a year after he would like them to come or 10 years after he would like them to come. He still pursues them. And I'll give you a quick story. We had a guy that's been plaguing the sheriff for almost the entire time he's been sheriff. He was known as a rock burglar. This guy would just go in and smash a window into a house, big bay windows, go in there, take stuff, and go. And he's eluded them for, I think, 4 of the terms that the sheriff has been in office. The sheriff has consistently pursued this man and arrested him last year. The sheriff doesn't give up. And I don't want your viewers and your listeners to think that Sheriff Arpaio has given up, because he hasn't. And I'm going to tell you this. If 2 years from today, we may not get the result that we're looking for today, but 2 years from today, that door opens up, I can tell you he will call me and tell me to come down there and answer whatever questions I have to answer for whatever authority is asking them. That's just the way it is. We're not stopping.
Mike, if someone out there knows something and would like to share that information with you, if they've got a tip or maybe even it's just a lead, they don't have firsthand information or firsthand account of something, but they know someone who is a witness, how can they get in touch with you? I'll throw it up on the screen because this will be posted on YouTube.
Mark, the best thing to do is you go to our website, which is www.mcsoccp.org, and there's a contact button with an email link, and just email it in. We review every one of those that we get, and if there's something germane to what we're doing, we will get back in touch with you. That is the best and fastest way to do it, because it comes directly to our office, bypasses the sheriff's office.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, is there anything else you'd like to tell us while you're here today?
No, Mark, I think right now, we're continuing forward, and, I want to thank you for being such a good friend to the sheriff's office. We truly appreciate it, and the work you did on the last videos, again, was outstanding, so I just want to thank you for that.
Mike, it's an honor to have been selected to produce those videos, of course, at your direction with your information. There's been a lot of confusion over that, but once you guys give me the direction and the script, I put those together for you, and it's an honor, an absolute honor to be associated with you, Sheriff Arpaio, and the Cold Case Posse in any way. I personally believe this is the most important scandal that has come down the pike in America's history. I believe ultimately we will see that the truth is known. I think you already have enough evidence that if it were anyone else, we would probably be talking charges already. But at the same time, it's not anyone else. So we have to keep digging, I suppose. But the bottom line is that you guys haven't given up. You are, in fact, the only law enforcement association in the United States that has had the courage to pursue this. You've produced very credible evidence. It's absolutely irrefutable. And yet, thanks to John Boehner, no one in Congress will touch it. And we do appreciate finding that out regarding Boehner today. All I can say is God bless you, my friend. Come back to see us, and I look forward to hearing more in the near future.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. You have a great day.